Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn, and we are here on Wednesday, April 24th. And this is your hub for information and activation on the rollout of the 5G technology worldwide. And of course, when a vested interest is threatened, as the telecom companies now are realizing that there is a worldwide movement, the moratorium movement, the 5G moratorium movement is very much gaining momentum. There are lawsuits and parliamentary actions in towns, municipalities, states, whole countries, a domino effect of reaction against the rollout of a technology which thousands of peer-reviewed studies have concluded is harmful to human health and the biosphere. If we look at history, you look at the tobacco industry history and others, there is the disinformation pushback, and that's what we're seeing now, and that is what we are here today to share with you, a point-by-point refutation of the propaganda being put forth by the mainstream media, such as a recent piece by MSNBC. And we are really glad to have our friend Mark Steele from the United Kingdom back with us. Mark has appeared on the show several times, also with Nancy Hopkins, my co-host from Cosmic Reality, on Carrie Cassidy. And so Mark is eminently qualified as an inventor, an energy weapons specialist, and 5G activist to help us understand the propaganda, the distortions, and what the science really is. We're also going to be sharing with you an article that came out just yesterday from takebackyourpower.net, which is an excellent source for all of us to keep in touch with regarding how we can assert our rights as citizens of the planet to combat 5G. There's an excellent article regarding the situation in Switzerland where the government, the people, actually voted for a moratorium on the rollout of 5G so that health effects could be studied, and that act by the Swiss people is being completely ignored by the Swiss telecom companies, who are simply rolling it out anyway. So this is a direct attack on the rule of law. So anyway, welcome, Mark. So glad to have you back with us.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's great to be back.
So Nancy, hello. How are you doing this morning?
Well, I'm doing okay until you showed me that thing on the Switzerland. That was disturbing, but not, I mean, we're going to get into it, but it's one of those things, again, why are they so desperate to get this out? What, they can't wait a few months, a half a year? What is the problem here? Their very actions must be waking people up to the fact that there's something wrong with them, that they are just pushing this on us, I would hope. So there's hope involved every time they do one of these insane things. Good morning, everybody. Glad you're with us, or day or night or whatever. And hi, Mark. I'm so glad you got back with us. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so, I get your point on this very much, Nancy, that for the reaction to be so quick on the part of the telecom companies in Switzerland to just steamroll and ignore what's happening, it does make you question what's the agenda, why the urgency, why are they being so blatant? You would think they would see the point that this will only provoke, more energized reaction from the people. And of course, this is already being shared worldwide, this news. I'm looking at the takebackyourpower.net article here. It's already, it's only a few hours since they shared this news, and it's already got 673 shares on Facebook alone. So, it's, they are waking the people up exponentially.
We should be really grateful of this, because Mark himself is somebody who, and Mark, I'm hoping that, we can get into talking about how you're seeing the same paralleled craziness, this push, this don't care about the law thing in your own case. So we have two things here today. We've got a nation who just said, we don't care what the people think. And we have another nation that says we can do anything we want to an individual. So I think it was very, let's say, fortuitous, if this information was going to come out on Switzerland, that it came out in time for us to talk about it.
Exactly. And before we went on the air just now, Mark and I were having a conversation. He was sharing with me some details of his situation legally in the UK, where he is actually being charged with threatening people because he served them notice of their liability for criminal behavior given the science on 5G. And simply letting somebody know that they're committing a human rights crime is apparently now in and of itself a crime in the UK that can get you put in prison. So this is the extent it's gone to. It is the fascism of it. It's just becoming so blatant. And we need to remember just, what the word fascism means. It gets tossed around a lot, and everybody says, well, it's Hitler, it's Mussolini, and then people are, tossing it around in regard to what's happening in the U.S. It is, as we know, a centralized autocratic government with severe economic and social regimentation and forcible suppression of opposition. And that's really what we're looking at. And so we are here at Radio 5G to share point-by-point information with you on countering the disinformation and propaganda that is being rolled out. So I'd like to start with the takebackyourpower.net article and start to go through this. We can then pivot to Mark's situation, and Mark will ask you for your commentary throughout. We do have also some information that was shared with me on an email thread. I will keep the names of the individuals private, as I do not have their permission to share their names or the specific emails. However, the technical points they're making, I think, are helpful to us to address, particularly with regard to ionized versus non-ionized radiation. The recent piece that came out on MSNBC, which is essentially a whitewash of 5G, pretended to be looking at both sides and then cited CDC and World Health Organization in a distorted way to say, well, there's really no threat, and all these activists don't understand ionized versus non-ionized, and there's no evidence of cancer, there's no evidence of serious health effects from cell phones. So go on, folks, 5G, here it comes, is basically the conclusion of the MSNBC article. Pardon me, it was a television piece. So we will go through this first piece from takebackyourpower.net. And, of course, Nancy and Mark, just feel free to jump in. I'll stop at certain points, but jump in anytime something is raising its head, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, then. So the article is by Josh Del Sol Bolu, published yesterday in takebackyourpower.net. It's titled 5G, Swiss Telcos Ignore Official Laws and Launch 5G, The Rule of Law Under Attack. Subtitled, with so many dominoes starting to fall, And they link that phrase, domino starting to fall, to their previous article, which is detailing all the cities and towns and countries around the world that are demanding a stop to 5G. With so many dominoes starting to fall where people don't want 5G, one had to expect the foundational rule of law would be tested. In the past month, official resolutions against 5G have been adopted by the cantons of Geneva, Vaud, Jura, and Neuchâtel in Switzerland. These are the first 4 Swiss regions to pass ordinances against 5G installation, comprising 1.5 million people, or 18% of the national population. Despite that, the majority state-owned Swisscom defied these laws on April 17th when they activated 5G stations in 102 locations in Switzerland, including Basel, Bern, Chur, Davos, Geneva, Lausanne, and Zurich. They did so by upgrading existing antennas installed for previous generations of wireless technology. And they have a separate link detailing exactly what the upgrade consisted of. So it was reported by the local of the population will be covered by the end of 2019, said the company in its statement. One of the core concerns is the number of extra antennas that will be needed. 5G can only transmit short distances. And here, they're giving a detail, Mark, that I'd like you to comment on it at some point. Which is that they are saying that, just let me give the figure. Reportedly now every 10 to 12 meters. Before we'd heard 500-600 feet, and now reportedly every 10 to 12 meters. It was every 50-60 feet. Experts are urging EU to follow the Resolution 1815 to the Council of Europe, asking for an independent task force to reassess the health effects of 5G. Swisscom, meanwhile, is urging Switzerland to relax environmental laws, which it claims are an impediment to the rolling out of 5G. So please go ahead, Mark.
Right, well, first and foremost, the mainstream narrative doesn't travel very far. Absolute load of bunkum. In England, that means rubbish. An absolute shower. These telecoms companies are deceivers, right? They're deceiving people. This is not the case. The reason why they need the small cells, and they need them at every few hundred yards, is because of the weapon system. 5G's got nothing to do with telecommunications for humans, all right? Because what they are, they're collimated signals, they're focus signals. We've already got a report from the European Union that these signals cannot be controlled. They breach the ICNIRP guidelines. They are illegal and unlawful. And the reason why they're rolling them out is to kill people. This technology is lethal. It's off the battle space. Anyone caught in any of the signal systems, one of the reasons why troops coming back from these battle zones, where they've been exposed to phased array radar signal systems, basically battlefield interrogation, have actually got brain injury, neurological disorders and brain injury from the signals. It's the same signals they're putting on those lamps and those close proximity to people's homes. The narrative about them not travelling far is complete and utter rubbish. Long-range radar, the blanket coverage for 5G is in the sub-gigahertz range. Sub-gig. Not this higher frequency. I'm not saying that's not 5G. It is, because 5G is a lot of things. One of the things it most certainly is densification. It's one of the technical parameters of 5G. That means more. It doesn't matter what it operates at, so it could be a 2G transmitter, 3G transmitter, 4G transmitter. They're talking about hundreds of billions more now. All of these transmitters are tested, so your 1, 2, 3, 4G transmitters are tested for safety, FCC approved, tested for safety. However, the test one transmitter is tested to be safe against a human. All right, at distance. Now, when you start to introduce tens of billions, I mean, we've heard the guy from the FCC, Tom Wheeler, everything's going to be connected from your pill bottles, from your smart TVs, how many of these transmitters, it's called overburden, by the way, overburden of microwave radiation. The more this radiation you are impacted with, the more it will kill you. So if you build a smart city and you build it full of transmitters, it will be toxic to biology. It doesn't matter what it operates at, it'll be toxic. The densification of 5G, one of its main technical parameters, is more, a lot more, and a lot more that will kill you. The narrative that they need them at every few feet on top of some light system, because obviously the light carriers, they're the telecommunications network. This is a kill grid. They're going to kill you. That's what I'm saying to people. The mainstream narrative is nonsense. Sub-gigahertz is actually long-range radar. Long-range radar, where we're talking about thousands of miles in distance here. So you can bounce it up the ionosphere. It's what's called an over-the-horizon weapon system, believe it or not. I mean, I'm saying this and I can't even believe it myself. We're actually having a conversation about something that's just, it's absolutely unbelievable.
Well, that's part, yeah, excuse me, Mark. That's part of the challenge that we deal with here in trying to communicate this story to people, is that most people in the United States, I believe, these days would not be that surprised that some industry is hiding harmful information so they can turn a profit on some new technology. Most people get that, and also most people, especially in the, post-Snowden era regarding surveillance and control, they also get that, yes, there is an elite faction that is supragovernmental that uses intelligence agencies to maintain blanket surveillance on the people in order to protect their best interests. Most people can go there. But when we, say to them, well, look, 5G is a killer. What's its purpose? Well, it's a weapon system. It's there to kill you. It's a very difficult narrative to put across because people just say, well, come on, now you've crossed into hysteria territory. Why, what's the upside for these people in rolling out a planetary-wide system that's going to kill everybody? Come on, that's just, it's going to kill their customers. It's going to kill clients. It's going to kill it's going to kill their own children. It's going to kill come on, it goes into cognitive dissonance big time. And, my own thought about it is that, we know the population agenda. It's been pretty explicit for a long time. We know that 5G would seem to be an ideal way to finally implement that. But also, I think it seems likely to me anyway, and I'd love to hear your response to this and Nancy's, that it's not as if the 20,000 low orbit satellites go up, it goes operational planet-wide, and then they just turn up the dial to max and zap us all, in a planetary wipeout. I think it's more likely that this is intended to be, as you say, battlefield and surveillance and control capability, yes, but in the meantime intended to do the slow dumbing down, weakening, irradiating, and creating chaos effect, and where they can selectively take out whoever they want whenever they want, but in the meantime sapping our energy, sapping our will to resist. And it could easily be argued, this is a point I'd love to hear Nancy's thoughts on also. We know that President Trump issued the executive order a few weeks ago covering national resilience against an EMP attack. Well, an EMP attack has, often been put forward as one of the possible false flags that might be used as an excuse to put a total clampdown, martial law on the planet. Blame it on the Russians, blame it on some terrorists. Somebody explodes a tactical nuke over major cities and an EMP wipes out the grid. And, there we are, martial law. And then they have, 5G in place. Whether, how they set that up to survive an EMP is another question. But that they have a system of total surveillance and control and elimination, if they choose, system. So, to me, that's a case that I can make with people over time. But right now, we're looking at how, like in the example of the town of Taos, New Mexico, a couple hours drive from where I'm sitting, where we are working with activists there, we're just having to stick to mainstream. We're just having to say, hey, this is going to hurt your children's neurological development. Hey, this is going to hurt your property values. Hey, they're rolling this out for profit. And they are all primed and ready. The town council and the county commissioners have all been given their talking points. They were immediately dismissed as hysterical anti-vaccine women, hysterical women all, buying series. And we're going the conservative route. So as we proceed with our going over the details here, I just wanted to put this in the mix for us to look at. Nancy, do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I think that you're underestimating the system, because to get that kind of in your head control and everything else, the effect is going to be very swift. He's already seeing it in Gateshead. How long has it been in Gateshead? And it's at low power. They don't even have the devices in the homes to be able to communicate with the 5G. Why have you got it turned on? I understand totally what you're saying, Michael. Absolutely. But at the same time, I think that you don't have the time to say for people to say, well, we're going to be sort of under control, but we can get control before they weaponize it. It's weaponized to begin with. That's my fear. And because I again am going to say what I say every show, that I was told about this system in 1976. And it was not designed to control as much as at that time I thought it was control. But as I watched it and I look at it, I'm not seeing control anymore, because they had us pretty well controlled. If I thought that we weren't controlled, it might be a different situation. But my gosh, this is so blatant in our faces, and still they just continue to trample on people like Mark, like the people in Switzerland. What is happening here? It's happening because I don't know if it started as their intent, but it certainly is now.
Nancy?
Yes, go, Mark.
Yeah, what actually happened? How they've actually achieved this? There's a couple of different narratives. There's a reality and there's a couple of narratives. All right. The security services think this is the best thing since sliced bread because they're going to spy on you. Your government thinks it's fantastic because they can control your moods, they can suppress behaviour, and basically they can get rid of all the police, because obviously this thing can watch you 24 hours a day. You can imprison in your own home, so they don't need prisons, don't need police officers, and they can't pay them, so they can get rid of them pretty quickly, because the target acquiring system with its dielectric lens, you can kill them. So obviously you can cut down on your pension costs, get rid of a lot of public sector waste, and you can control the population. That's what they believe it to be. The reality is, and the capacity of the network tells me what it really is. It's a kill grid. Now, I know, Michael, it's very hard. When I spoke about this last year, I was pretty brutal with people to the point where, some people got upset. Some people thought I was, like as you said, being hysterical. What I didn't tell them was what I really do know. This is actually a takedown of all biological life on this planet. No one survives it. It's not the Guidestones. It's not an agenda. It is a total annihilation. This is a war waged on mankind and all of God's creations. That's what it is. Now, if you'd asked me this a year ago, I would have said to you, you're crazy, not true. All right? I wouldn't have believed that for 1 minute. The information that I've received over the last year and the implications of where the police have basically been orchestrated, we've got every single charity in the country has been hacked. I can show that this is torture. It's torturing a lot of people suffering neurological disorders, ringing in the ears, basically tortured in their own homes. So when you contact, Amnesty International, Justice, all these, let's say, NGOs who are supposed to be there, who've been set up specifically to help people in these situations, nobody's listening. The mainstream media, they started to hack it significantly. I mean, it's obviously always been managed, but there was the little bit. I mean, you had Watergate, you had things came out. What we're seeing now is a total takedown of the media. The media's absolutely controlled, and that's why nobody's really talking about what 5G is all about. They're in the periphery. They're talking about, the Chinese, it can spy on you. No, these transmitters are weapon systems. They were used during the Second World War. They can damage people's neurological disorders. They can boil your eyes in your head. I mean, these signals, it's the reason why pilots use a weapon system called ARM. Anti-radiation missiles, it's the first thing you take out on the battlefield, especially if you're fighting a sophisticated foe. Right, so anybody can go and have a look at ARM missiles. It's anti-radiation missile. The reason you have to take them out, they're long range, very thin. You take that out because what you don't want to do is put your equipment into an area where you've got these type of weapons, these secret weapon systems, because it'll break them, bring a plane down, damage a plane, damage a pilot. And the reason why pilots have head-up display systems in their craft is to protect their eyesight. So they've got screens, they've got blast, the screens that they put down on the helmets. It's actually to protect their heads while they go in and do these attacks. Obviously, a lot of that's automated now. So you've got AUVs, ATVs. We've got automated weapons platforms on the battle space. And the reason for that is because this weaponry has become so sophisticated. See, they don't tell you Boston Dynamics. They're trying to build these robots because the toxicity on the battle space is so severe, men can't fight in it. I mean, they can fight somebody who's got a few bow and arrows, or a bow and an arrow, or throwing rocks at them. That's not a problem. But when you're fighting against a sophisticated foe, he's got the same weaponry as you, these secret weapon systems. It's too toxic on the battlefield. They know that. That's why they spend an awful lot of money now on automating the automated warfare.
Yeah. So, okay.
Well, to a town near you.
Let me.
Yeah.
Michael,
Go ahead, Nancy.
Can I just?
Go ahead, Nancy.
What I want to do right now is, see, I was there when what he's talking about is electronic warfare. He's talking about an electronic battlefield. I was there when the first beginnings of that concept started back in 1972. And even then, okay, on the battlefield, I realized, because of things that I was getting secret reports and stuff, that people that were operators around, or maintenance people around radars, were getting severe damage to their health. Okay, I was getting reports of the original goggles that they would use to be able to see through at night, that those things were burning the retina. I was also the safety officer for the company, and that was one of the reasons that I began to hear these things. And so, I said, well, we've got to inform people that this is happening. And no, they had it in a top secret, need to know category that nobody could touch. So when he's talking about, this kind of like futuristic warfare, it's not been futuristic for a very long time, but it is so highly classified that to be able to even access the understanding of an electronic warfare, you have to be in a separate organization. We were called the super spooks. We had clearances that to say the name, like top secret or confidential or secret, to say the word that meant what we had was that in itself a secret.
Yeah.
So what he's talking about is really solid stuff that has been there for decades. It's just that now they're bringing it into the civilian world. Okay, and we're going, oh, this is new tech. It's not new technology. It's technology that is newly being emplaced. So it's ready to go.
Yeah, my concern about it, because there's no refuting, the military science that you and Mark are bringing out here. And when Mark shares with us that, particularly with regard to his capability regarding the ionosphere, that it is by design a wipeout instrument, weapon for biological life on the planet. Now, as a writer, as a spokesperson, as an activist, that presents me with a major storytelling problem, right? Because immediately you go to, okay, who would do this and why? What possible benefit? What's the narrative? There are really only two possibilities. An alien race that wants to terraform and completely alter the face of the planet and its atmosphere so that it is hospitable to them and they wipe out the current occupants and their ecosystem. That is basically scenario one, or that is really the only possible benefiting party. Or you go with a satanic story on this, that this represents, it's kind of like, for those who have been following Game of Thrones, the most recent episode from a couple of days ago, it's got a worldwide audience, right? Here comes the Night King and the army of the dead, and they're defending them at Winterfell, and they ask the three-eyed raven, well, what does the Night King want? What does he want? And he just says, darkness. The wiping out of human memory forever and eternal darkness. So, we have a difficult time selling that story to people. And I am in this position, and with the people I'm working with Eleni and our friends in Taos and Boulder right now and elsewhere, we need to be able to tell a story that people just don't roll their eyes. Like you said yourself, Mark, a year ago, you'd have said, oh, that's crazy. That's not, a kill grid. They're trying to kill us all. How can we face the science, face the military nature of it, face the capability designed into it to accomplish that kind of annihilation, but at the same time wake people up without having cognitive dissonance take over, have them roll their eyes like, oh, you're a bunch of crazies and you're buying into, And personally, I think it's more likely that it is going to be implemented and used selectively in an overall dumbing down thing. That's what I'd like to believe. But then I'm faced with the accelerated urgency on the part of the bad guys that we can see here. It's as if they know a clock is ticking, and they're willing to put up with all kinds of pushback from outraged citizens in Switzerland and elsewhere. Oh, you're hurting the rule of law. They go, we're not going to have to deal with you in about 3 or 4 months. So fine, start your lawsuits, have your little street protests, because our agenda calls for, a major move in the coming months. That's what's got me worried. Does that make sense to you?
That makes absolute sense. Like as I said before, I wouldn't have said that I didn't think it was a kill grid. I knew that quite a while ago, but I'm talking about more in the spiritual sort of realm. Because obviously, who wants to wipe out all of biology? We're talking about, you mentioned whether it's some other race, or I'm sort of erring on the, well, in fact, I'm pretty sure it's a spiritual battle. This is between the devil and God. I'm absolutely positive about that, by the way. And if you'd asked me this, like I said a year ago, I would have said, yeah, you're absolutely crazy. No, I'm absolutely positive now. I'm a total convert to the whole thing. One of the things that I had quite a number of people contact me and say some very, very interesting things to me. But I did a talk down in Totnes area. It was actually in a chapel, and we'd set up the screen, pretty large chapel. I got up at the lectern, and I'd already been told about this prophecy. And I looked down at this very ancient Bible, very large Bible, and it was Isaiah 61. it was actually open. The Bible was open on the page of the prophecy, and I really got a bit of a, like, not a funny turn, but it was inexplicable. Now I know the chance. There's obviously a lot of pages in the Bible, which it could have been, but it wasn't. It was actually the prophecy, and I was absolutely, and there's been a lot of other things that have come to pass in this last year that have all.
Mark, what's the prophecy?
It's the end of times prophecy, and it's it's been in the Bible for quite a number of years. I was absolutely shocked to get the connections. I had somebody contact me and showed me some symbols and signs. I've got somebody who's very, very close to me who's also been seeing symbols and signs. They were the same signs, same symbols. I mean, totally inexplicable. The sort of thing that you have to go past your own sort of scientific knowledge on a subject to be able to grasp it. I mean, I just couldn't sort of computate this thing at all. In fact, it was quite difficult.
Right. Well, the problem for us in going down that narrative is that we're going to lose a lot of people immediately. I have my own. I mean, I have my own spiritual path and practice for many years.
Yeah.
I understand well that this is a battle between good and evil. People have difficulty comprehending that the idea that there is conscious, deliberately chosen evil. People don't want to really live in that world. Well, they do. The evidence of it is overwhelming, and we don't even need to go into the satanic child abuse and murder and torture rings. That evidence is so massive at this point.
Yeah.
But for us, in terms of here on this show right now, and to the people who are listening, I understand about spirit-guided synchronicity, messages that come to us when we open a holy book, a particular page or passage that will jump out to confirm something that is in the field. I understand the authenticity of that. And, when we are looking at, like with this article from takebackyourpower.net, we are looking at, what is the story, the fact-based story that we can tell that is going to wake up the most people to the most effective action in the shortest period of time?
May I answer that question? I think we have to push the concept of the Sixth Extinction Event, because if we look at what is happening to nature, just if you don't want to, and I agree with you that most people can't handle this really sci-fi plot that we're trying to sell them, whichever story you want to go with. If we tell people the truth about what is happening around them, that there is a total collapse of the biosphere beginning with the insect and the microorganisms in the soil. If we focus all of our energy into putting forth that storyline, we've got to save the bees. We've got to save the insect world. What's causing it? It's the Wi-Fi. You put the 5G out, it's going to cook everything. We can see it in the trees. We've got to make them tree lovers, because that will take us into a situation where we're still talking about the science, we're still talking about death rate, but it's no longer a plot, it's an accident. Because we have to give the people inside those organizations that excuse. Now, on the one side, we can threaten them with what we were talking about yesterday, was the concept of plausible deniability. We should be able to go to these legislators, all these different places, and say to them, look, if you hear me out here, I'm going on the record, and you're no longer going to have deniability regarding what you know or don't know about the science. Are you willing to do that? because that all of a sudden puts it into a very 3D, because, if you continue to push this, then, don't worry about them threatening your job or your family. We're going to threaten you with prison, because we'll bring you up on manslaughter to murder charges.
Yeah, the Extinction Rebellion thing's just it's controlled narrative. What they want is they want more smart meters, more electric cars, more LED street lights. They want to chop all the trees down, use them to replace the coal-fired power station. That takes the oxygen out of the air. So Extinction Rebellion, absolutely. In fact, they are supported by a number of international banking systems, etc. The whole organisation, Extinction Rebellion, means we're going to extinct you. You only have to push that envelope slightly. They're all about LED streetlights will kill and maim and destroy biology. They're already doing it. They're already killing all the small pollinators. It's a pulse modulated frequency light. It's extremely toxic to life. It's toxic to humans. I've only been in Barcelona less than 3 years and have doubled the breast and the prostate cancer. That 450 nanometers frequency in a pulse square wave, so it's basically a stop-start emission. That in itself it's a program called soft kill. The soft kill program will kill millions from the current exposures. So we know that I've got a photonics expert friend of mine. He's one of the leading experts in the UK. I sent him the study that came out of Exeter. It's Barcelona and 20 other institutions in Spain where they've carried out this research to show that the blue phosphor-coated LED streetlights are pretty toxic. And they've shown this doubling increase in only 2 or 3 years of the exposure from this type of optical radiation and the cancer increase. When I sent him the document, he started to cry because he knew, as I also know, that the exposure to that type of optical radiation, the epidemic is 15 to 25 year out. So we've already seen a doubling increase in 3. So you're going to see an acceleration in that cancer rate. Children in particular will die from the LED street lighting that are rolling out across the West. So Extinction Rebellion are an organisation who are pushing for more LED street lights, because obviously they're trying to save the planet from some bogus carbon dioxide sort of issue. They want more electric cars. Electric cars are pretty lethal. They're probably more toxic. They are, in fact. It's more particulate contaminants come out of an electric vehicle than what come out of a dirty old diesel. I'll explain how that happens.
Right. Let me just share with people that I just shared here with Nancy and Mark a link to an article in The Optimist Daily, which is detailing, the Extinction Rebellion going mainstream, all the protests taking place around the world, particularly in Europe, UK, where young people are, particularly young people, not just young people, it's actually across the age spectrum, occupation spectrum, are rallying against the extinction of life on the planet. But as Mark is pointing out, once it starts to get mainstream exposure, you can count on a mainstream agenda. And that, if it's really about, well, we need more LED streetlights, we need more electric cars, because that's going to save the planet. The true caring and enthusiasm and, authentic rebellion of young people against what they see in the destruction of the biosphere and what Nancy is describing here, the Sixth Extinction Event, that is being co-opted, by, now we can also mount our own effort to awaken the youth. Eleni and myself had some very interesting conversations in the last few days in Boulder with people who are linked to the worldwide youth movement, which has been primarily focused, on fracking, has been focused on, on climate change and, the CO2 link, etc. But if we can wake them up to the reality, this growing worldwide 5G moratorium movement that we see happening here, which is going to kill the biosphere a whole lot faster than fracking, a whole lot faster than climate change. It's a matter of months, and I believe there is a very strong potential that we can unite with that movement, that we can de-co-opt them to join us in the real fight, because that's what I believe and hope.
I believe that the whole Extinction Rebellion is because of the 5G narrative. Obviously, that information's starting to get out. The Sasha video has been seen over 1 million times now. So a lot of people have actually watched that. And because of that and the impact of it, this was the whole point of this Extinction Rebellion thing, because they're trying to keep the real story off the mainstream and replace it with something similar. I mean, the Extinction Rebellion flag is basically a swastika. It's a swastika. This is a National Socialist Nazi movement. I mean, I'm not saying that the people are. They're just easily deceived. The deception. I'll tell you a little bit about electric cars. Lithium ion is extremely toxic. It's extremely difficult to mine. It's very, very energy intensive to actually produce those batteries. The weight of the extra weight on the vehicle actually means that you use a lot more rubber. You use 3 to 4 times the tire rubber on an electric vehicle because of its weight alone. Now, the fact that you actually knock the tires off, you actually go through them, that's extremely damaging to the environment, because obviously that's another very, very intensive, energy-intensive industry to make tires. So you've got that, which actually would increase by 3-4-fold internationally. So you need that much more rubber, that much more intensity. But not only that, the rubber that comes off the back of those tires are particulate contaminants that you put into air. The extra weight of the vehicle also is on the tarmac. Tarmac is extremely toxic. So the extra weight of the vehicle picks up more particulate contaminants and puts them in air. You've then got the braking system. The braking system is normally asbestos, some type of materials in there. They're extremely dangerous to breathe in, extremely toxic. And because the car's heavier, you have to exert more pressure. So you go through a lot more toxic material that you put into the air as particulate contaminants for people to breathe. However, the most dangerous thing about electric vehicles is for the people that have to sit in them. Now, if you're travelling 10 or 15 miles, it's not a problem. But can you imagine some taxi driver who's been forced into one and having to drive it for 8 or 12 hours a day? The IC and IRP guidelines and the tests where these electric vehicles have been tested for the radiation in the cabin have only been tested for 30 minutes. So what about the poor guy, the poor taxi driver who's going to get testicular cancer, bowel cancer, kidney cancer, brain cancer for driving that vehicle around? Is anybody caring about him? No. And the reason for that, this technology is being driven by a government who, for some inexplicable reason, want to put a dangerous technology onto the streets. If I was to set fire to a battery, the lithium ion, if it's charged, if you've got a fully charged battery, you've basically got a bomb, you've got a potential dirty bomb. Now, if one of these vehicles, which they will and have already been set on fire, there's been a number of fires, considering the lack of number of these electric vehicles on the road, there's been a significant number of fires caused by the batteries. That then causes what's called a hazmat materials issue in that area. Any first responders who go to that vehicle are potentially in a toxic environment from the lithium ion as it's burning, because it actually travels at speed through clothing, through your skin. And then what happens, those people potentially will die in a few years' time, depending on how much of this dangerous toxicity that they get from the battery. So then you've then got a massive cleanup. I mean, imagine the centre of New York, we have one of these battery vehicles actually explode, and obviously the more that you're going to get, the more potential there is for that. You've then potentially got what's called a dirty bomb. You know how everybody was on about dirty bombs and how it's
right.
Well, that's what you've just set off in the middle of New York. The cleanup would be in the tens to tens of millions of dollars to clean this technology.
Yeah, and that's just from one car. I'm hearing you. Yeah, excuse me for popping in here, Mark. We're going to be coming up in just a few short minutes on our first hour break, and I'd like to just sort of lay out some thoughts about where we might go in the second hour. Yeah. In responding to the disinformation that's being put out, for example, by MSNBC in their recent piece, the ionized versus non-ionized radiation, they basically pretend to present both sides, and then they make it seem ridiculous to even consider that sweet little old 5G might be a danger to anyone. So I'd particularly like us to address some of those technical points, which I know you can help with. And in terms of the narrative going forward, what is likely to happen? What tools can we put in people's hands? What hope can we give people about how we can assert our sovereignty, how we can, take back your power, as takebackyourpower.net is all about, or the In Power movement, another really excellent organization that's putting, power back in people's hands. As we can see in Switzerland and with your case, Mark, and I'd like to, focus more specifically on the travesty of justice in the UK with you in the second hour. But as we can see, even when people are taking their power back, asserting their rights, instituting lawsuits, getting votes in local provinces in Switzerland to stop the 5G rollout, it's being ignored, and the steamrolling layout is happening anyway. So if we know that, okay, then I'd like to call in Nancy's, military strategist mindset, looking down the road. How do we make this story so unignorable that that the worldwide wake up and refusal, the non-violent disengagement from the system, that has been proven to be the most effective way of taking down a tyranny. It's not violent street protest. It's not, a rebellion in the jungle. It is a mass disengagement of cooperation with the system. That, a non-violent, massive disengagement of cooperation. And what we are looking at in the coming weeks here in my area is, particularly in New Mexico, is there will be an awareness-raising event. Notice will be served to the county commissioners and the city council in a very, friendly way. You are our fellow neighbors. You two have children. You two, care about your own health, and waking up all the people. Okay. The likelihood that the county commissioners are going to say, whoa, you're so right. We're going to ignore the billionaire resort owner who's already telling his people they're going to have 5G by midsummer. We're going to ignore the telecom companies who bought out the New Mexican the governor of New Mexico and allowed the FCC to railroad over local jurisdiction. We're going to ignore all that because you nice activists have really touched our hearts. I don't think that's going to happen, but it will be videotaped, the entire process, and people will wake up. And what we are looking at is the necessity of making this, by the time the Iowa caucuses roll around for the presidential primaries, and that's in January, that 5G is unignorably on the national agenda. And if we can get one of the, to be one of the Democratic presidential candidates because it is the perfect, like Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard kind of issue, where it is obvious corporate takeover, it is obvious corporate usurpation of democracy, it is obviously, opposed to human health and freedom, and it is being, blatantly rolled out despite the will of the people. And so then going forward, we've got something as we enter the election year that I predict, my sense is, it's going to be rolled out anyway. The FCC is going to try to steamroll it anyway. People are going to start, feeling the health effects. There is going to be a massive increase in opposition, in popular resistance. And at some point, there will be someone who will, a prominent person, we are hoping, who will take a stand at a national televised debate and say, and call the whole thing out. That's part of what we're looking at.
Michael, I have to just jump in here, because you're looking for some leader to get us out of this. This is not going to happen. Can I just, because we've only got a couple of minutes, 5 minutes here, I want to go back to that article about Switzerland, because I thought they put it in real succinct terms as to what Switzerland in particular means right now, and also the way that you probably should be pushing the agenda of how to make them wake up to the fact that there is a very bad problem here. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'd just like to read this.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, all right. The title of this section is 5G, a technological dictatorship, ? It is important to comprehend the gravity of the situation. If a law prevents a company from deploying their agenda because of harm to others, but the company does it anyway, and somehow the company and its executives escape immediate judicial or police action, then the rule of law is no longer in effect. The body of independent science on 5G, millimeter wave, and microwave radiation is conclusive. These frequencies harm humans and all life. And the wireless industry does not have one single study indicating that 5G is safe. As we saw them testify to a Senate Senate meeting that they did not put any money into studying health effects from the technology that AT&T's head, the head of AT&T, the head of Sprint, and the head of Verizon said in a U.S. Senate, agenda meeting thing about 5G that they'd never studied it. So that's what they're referencing here. It has never been studied according to them, because every time they studied it, it was terrible. So they just dumped those studies. So they don't have anything. Nothing. It is deeply ironic that within national history, a nation historically recognized for its higher-minded values to not engage in war, we're talking about Switzerland, wireless companies have now effectively declared war on all people living in this nation by deploying 5G against consent and directly in violation of both official moratorium and independent science. Because there are no studies indicating safety, these acts of 5G deployment against consent in Switzerland and elsewhere 5G is being deployed also directly violates the Nuremberg Code, which states that one's informed consent is absolutely necessary prior to any human experimentation. Though one truly begins to wonder if indeed this is experimentation as such, one could make a very strong case that those behind 5G know exactly what they are doing to human biological health, since there were already over 2,300 studies on wireless compiled by the Navy in the 1970s, and you can get a copy of the PDF on this study. I happen to have it. So in the guise of profit, progress, and competition, a weapon is being deployed against us all, whether it's intended as such or not. The science on this is clear. What's more, 5G is even intended to operate with beamforming applications on the same frequency ranges used by military crowd control weaponry. Now, we're at the top of the hour, but what I think that we should look at is, just as Mark has pointed out to me a number of times, look at the law. They are breaking the law. And if we focus just on the fact that the rollout itself is breaking the law, the fact that there is no data indicating it is safe, admitted to by the very people that are pushing this agenda. So I'm going to just throw on a 4.5-minute song here. It's Hunter Hayes, it's Invisible, and we'll be right back. And we are back.
Welcome back, everyone, to Radio 5G. This is Michael Henry Dunn with my co-host, Nancy L. Hopkins, and our special guest, Mark Steele, from over in the UK, joining us today in going through the disinformation propaganda campaign that is being rolled out in response to the worldwide movement to declare a moratorium on the 5G rollout. And Nancy, you were just bringing up, I just want to clarify, an excellent point in response to what I was saying regarding, hey, this is not about some leader stepping forward who is going to save us all. In talking about the presidential primary campaign, in my mind, that's really an awareness-raising framework that's out there. Yeah, it would certainly help if that awareness to really explode in a way if someone like Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard were to champion the Stop 5G cause. But what you are addressing, Nancy, about the rule of law, that this comes down to, this article in Switzerland is pointing out, an overturning of the rule of law, which has been, as we know, largely overturned in many places for a very long time, quite systematically. And we can, need only look at what's happening to Mark in the UK with his upcoming case, in which he is facing prison for letting people know that there is scientific evidence they are about to commit a human rights crime for which there will be consequences. That is now being painted as some kind of terrorist threat to let people know that the rule of law has consequences for committing human rights crimes. That's where we are at with this situation. So, I'm very, very much aware, Nancy, and I thank you for bringing the focus back, that it's not about, like Tina Turner says, we don't need another hero, right? We do need each one of us to step up and be heroes and heroines.
Let's just stop it for a second and think about, not even 6 weeks ago, when you and I decided that we were going to put together this radio show and the 5G-know.com, which is a website that we'd hoped really was going to do what Take Back Your Power does, but there's all sorts of other places that they're doing it even better and faster than we could. And what's happening is that in 6 weeks' time, I'm seeing what I estimated I would be lucky to see in 6 months' time. So what I want you to even conceive of is that why are they so desperate? Let's take it to the metaphysics concept of it. Why are they so desperate? It's because all of their control mechanisms have not been working. Too many of us are waking up to the awfulness that's here, and too many of us are becoming vocal and active. It's catching, it's trending. Okay, so that's what they're afraid of. So they have to work very quickly to try to stop this in any way they can. All right, but they can't stop it because there's so much more of us than there are of them, and some of them are us. They just need an excuse to join us to stop this stuff. So instead of thinking of Bernie Sanders or anybody else, think of a whole new party, just like Mark is putting forth in his Sun party, a whole new party of humanity worldwide that steps up, one nation after another, and says, look, at laws are laws. We either live by laws or we go into anarchy. So my feeling is that we shouldn't be looking at the establishment. That's what got us here. Let's look at ourselves. I mean, just think about this, all right? The Tea Party. Okay, the Tea Party comes out, and there are a bunch of people who just are walking around going, there's something wrong here. They're taking too much of my money. There's something wrong. And within 18 months of sort of being all of a sudden not there and then there, they were a real vocal and influencing aspect to the presidential election. And then they disappeared. Do you think that they disappeared, or do you think that they just walked away because it had become too organized, too much part of the awfulness? These people are still there. We have seen it happen before. It can happen again. We don't want to go with what's there. We want to bring in new. We want a new party to emerge from the hearts and minds of people who have awakened to the fact that there is a spiritual battle against good and evil, no matter who the players are. And I'm like Mark. I could have, a year ago, I might have, well, about 4 years ago, I would have argued against that. No, let's not go there. I call it, wooey-dooey. Don't get out there. Let's stay 3D. No. Now I am as convinced as he is that we have to really get down to, what side of the fence are you on? Okay, I'm off the pulpit.
No. The thing that we're talking about before, this is an assault. What they're basically doing with the 5G, the 5G rollout. 5G's densification means more, so you've got smart cities. By the time you get billions of these transmitters, which we now know are a classified carcinogen, class 1, classified carcinogen, by the time you have billions and billions basically electrocuting humans in the cities, that's all you're doing, you're electrocuting them, you're putting energy in air, microwave radiation, pulse modulated microwave radiation at that, in air, to electrocute the population. They've only just switched the 5G on in South Korea, it appears, and set fire to 5 cities. Now, so you'll burn down the telecommunication systems, you'll break down the fabric of the buildings, because this is pulse-modulated energy. We've already seen reactor walls starting to break, fatigue, so you fatigue materials. These materials, the bridges, the buildings, nothing's been actually developed or tested to have this type of microwave pulse modulated radiation energy in a cityscape. I mean, this is just absolutely unbelievable. It's the administration of a noxious substance. It's assault. Microwave radiation is used on the battle space as a weapon system to either subdue or harm your opponent. They're bringing it into a cityscape near you, and there's only one reason I can see why they're doing that. They want to kill en masse. This is a weapon system. The antenna design, it's a weapon system. And believers, they don't like it. They don't like what I'm saying. That's why they're trying to get me sent to prison, because they know we've caught them before the weapon system is fully deployed. The weapon system be fully deployed in 2 to 3 years, and I can tell you now, we don't wake everybody up and get it stopped. It's all over. It's absolutely all over.
Well, we do not have 2 to 3 years to save the biosphere. If we don't stop it very shortly, like 18 months.
Yeah, we've got to stop it now.
Yeah, it's got to be done now. One of the things that you just said, oh gosh. Okay, go, Michael. It slipped out of my head. Go. You talk.
Okay. Mark, I'd like you to address, if you could, please, a point brought up in this MSNBC piece from yesterday.
Yes.
In which they glide over the whole ionized radiation versus non-ionized, and making the unequivocal statement that all these 5G activists have somehow just missed the fact that cell phone radiation and 5G are just really the harmless side of the ionized versus non-ionized radiation issue. And I know I don't have the technical background to be able to address that, but I'd love to have you share with us on that.
Brilliant, great. When I hear this mainstream narrative, it makes me want to scream the rooftops. The recent $25 million study carried out by the USA National Toxicology Program study, near 10 years in the making, showed that non-ionizing radiation is a category class 1 cancer-causing radiation, number 1. The Ramsini Institute 10-year study supports the NTP study, another 10-year study that shows that non-ionizing radiation causes cancer. The Israeli study, which also supports the NTP study, showed that battlefield interrogation equipment, non-ionizing radiation, give troops on the battle space cancer. No ifs or buts, it's carcinogenic. Non-ionizing radiation, pulse-modulated non-ionizing radiation, gives you cancer. Any criminal, because that's who they are, I want people to go and find out who the reporter was at MCN, get in touch with him, Get them locked up. They should be in prison for making wild statements like that are incorrect while people die. They're covering up a crime. Non-ionizing radiation, fact. A laser uses non-ionizing radiation to cut steel. Yeah? Any idiot, any ignorant person who believes that there's not enough energy in the non-ionizing radiation part of the spectrum is a fool. What that's referring to is non-ionizing radiation in its natural state. I agree with that. It's not safe, because obviously if I tie you out in a desert in the middle of the sun, you'll die. All right? So it's not safe, but that's natural occurring non-ionizing radiation. We're talking about man-made non-ionizing radiation here, a completely different. And what do you think the world's military have been doing, developing weapon systems that operate in that part of the spectrum? Do you think they've just been doing it for a bit of a jape, for a bit of a laugh? Do you think they've spent multiples of billions of pounds developing these weapon systems because they don't work? I mean, come on, non-ionizing radiation. These people want dragging out of their offices. They want every last penny. These are deceivers. That's the type of deception of the mainstream media, non-ionizing radiation. I've never heard anything as ridiculous in all my life. And I get this from scientists, well-established scientists who'll say to me, but Mark, it's none of energy in that part of the spectrum. I mean, it's the sort of thing where, it's infuriating, the ignorance around these systems. I mean, I can shoot you with a laser. It's non-ionizing radiation. I can actually show you a weapon system. You can use ultrasounds as a weapon system. You can use masers as a weapon system. Any collimated energy form is a weapon. And that's what 5G is. 5G is a weapon system. It's coming to a town near you. It is not, absolutely not, telecommunications for humans. Might be telecommunications for machine to machine, because that's how they're selling it. They're selling it because obviously the technologists who are fitting this technology, they've got to think to themselves, well, why we're putting this in? The reason why that's telling them is autonomous vehicles, going back to electric vehicles. So electric autonomous vehicles, it's all a scam. It's all a scam to roll out a weapon system, a kill grid, because instead of taking people to a camp where they can put you and gas you and put you in an oven, what they've done, they've built an oven round you. The oven's called 5G, Smart City, IoT. That's what it is. It's a kill grid, and it's here to kill. That's why they're building these technologies out in cities as we speak. The technology I've seen being rolled out in the USA as part of the 5G rollout are reactors to change the constituent parts in air. So you can't breathe them. So it'll gas you. So they're basically building a gas oven around.
Okay, Mark, let me stop you here. Let me stop you here, because this to me was, I've heard you say this before, and it was so that I really kind of like had a detachment from the information, and I want you to work with me so that we can make people understand this. And I know we're going off script. We're supposed to be talking about law and not getting people scared, but we've got to get this on the record. Okay. All right. Now, one of the things I do want to say is that on a previous show, somebody said, I still haven't found his patents, because Mark has gone out and said, I have patents in this stuff. I know what I'm talking about. A judge ruled that he was to be considered, an authority on all of this subject matter. When it comes to patents, as you as a lay person, even if you own a patent, it's very difficult to find out what all this is about. And that's why patent attorneys make a huge amount of money just to find out if you can apply for a patent. But I can absolutely go on the record to say that Mark has those patents. I know he does, because I've seen the documentation. That's all I can say about it. But when this man tells you something of a technical nature, he is the world's expert on this subject right now. Now, right now, he's going to tell you about a conversation he had with somebody in the United States, and he was shown a piece of equipment. And when he looked at the equipment, it made him laugh because he had actually designed a part of that equipment. And I'm going to probably stop him a couple of times to try to get this information out and on the record, because this was what this is United States technology. This is what they're putting in here. So, Mark, can you tell the story again about, how you found out about this reactor?
What actually happened, I got sent to a carbon capture and storage conference in Leeds. I was working for a company who was part of Shell Technology Ventures. It was one of their companies that they owned, a technology company, a research and development project. I had quite a lot of scientists in that project, quite a lot of doctorates and a lot of professors, who I was part of capturing the intellectual property, because obviously I've got a strategic mind. I'm an inventor, so I understand the value in, let's say, IP, intellectual property. And I'd been tasked to actually pick up the technology. Anyway, I ended up getting sent to this conference on carbon reduction, carbon capture and storage. And the whole thing was a scam. It was an absolute scam. Didn't make any commercial sense. There's no economic sense in it at all. Because I'd like to address that as well. There's no economic value in 5G. It's an economic terrorist attack. So anybody that says there's money in it, like Tom Wheeler, he's a fool, because there's obviously it'll kill everything. So anyway, I went to this conference, and I was sitting there basically chuckling to myself and thinking, these lot are absolutely at it. I mean, the corruption, and basically they've got there's a lot of assets in the North Sea, $30 billion worth. Nobody can afford to decommission them. So obviously they want to use them for something else. And if they can hang them on the government's ticket for carbon capture and storage, well, that's just the way it is. So it makes perfect sense to me from a commercial perspective why you'd want to carry on with this complete fallacy and basically fraud and deception, because obviously somebody's going to make some money. Because I get that. I see the whole deception and fraud thing, and I understand why people do things, especially if there's a monetary gain. That's why I don't get 5G, because there isn't a monetary gain at all. What actually happened, I was sitting there and I thought, hang on a minute, I know about the dissociation of molecular bonds, I know how the frequencies, and I know about light frequencies and a lot of other very, very interesting things. And I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll invent a reactor we can put it in a flue and we can break the carbon dioxide bond. Obviously, certain frequencies, certain amounts of power you can put in there. Anyway, I went on to Strathclyde University to speak to a professor, pal of mine.
Okay, let me stop you just here so that I can kind of put it in lay terms here. So you were seeing a carbon, it was part of that, what do they call it, the climate crisis they're having. And you could see a much more efficient way of changing this if this was a problem. And so from that position, you began to look at a particular device that would do what? It would take the carbon out of the air and change it into...
Yeah. Well, what we're going to do is break the carbon, the covalent bond between carbon and oxygen. So the CO2, we're going to break it, all right? And what you'd get out of that, you'd get carbon deposits, which had a value, and also you'd end up with oxygen. Now, I was going to build this reactor in a flue. So anyway, I invented something.
Okay, sorry. What do you mean by flue?
A chimney.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So in a power station chimney, we could fit this device, and that would be able to break down the carbon dioxide. Obviously, the whole thing's a scam anyway. Obviously, plants and trees, they breathe CO2. The more you put in the atmosphere, the more they have to breathe it, the more they stick it underground. It's one of those earthy balance things. The whole CO2 thing is just a bit of a scam. If you actually look at the numbers and how you'd actually be able to assess it anyway, I mean, the whole thing is just it's all part of this green agenda to kill everything. Anyway, I invented this particular reactor, and obviously when we did the feasibility study, I knew that what the radiators looked like, and I also knew that we needed to cool them, because a lot of power density in there, and what you don't want is the radiators to set on fire. Because at certain frequencies you can get some breakdown, you get some heat there. So we needed to put some cooler pipes in and some cooler system into the invention. And anyway, someone sent me a picture of these some people who fit military equipment in the US sent me a picture of this thing and said, "Mark, what is it? Because we don't believe it to be telecoms." Now, these are telecoms experts, by the way, and operate in the military sort of field. And I started to laugh because I said, "Well, that's my invention." Now, that invention never got developed. It was we obviously you put an invention in. You get 12 months to it's obviously it's not in the public domain and it doesn't get published.
Okay, I'm going to stop you again. You're talking about the patent process right now.
Yeah, patent process. What actually happens? You put an invention in, and if you do, there's no point publishing an invention unless you've got the resources or you bring the money in to actually do the development. A lot of people let them go into the public domain. Well, that's a bit stupid. And what you do, you pull them, even though it's my invention and obviously my name's on it. So somebody could then develop it, yeah? If you don't license it and you haven't actually paid the fee, somebody comes across it, they can use it. However, you've still got your name on it. Anyway, we parked it off to one side because we couldn't raise the money because obviously the oil and gas people still want to go with the carbon capture and storage scam because obviously they've got all these assets that they want to try and offload or get somebody else to use them in the North Sea, because what they can't do, they can't afford to decommission them. Yeah, because they've got $30 billion. I mean, where do you get the money from to decommission all that equipment? So they need it for something else. And if they can get some government subsidy, which obviously is a massive carbon subsidies kicking around, multi-millions of pounds of money, where they just kick the ball down the road a bit. So I could understand that. But when this person sent me the images, I knew exactly what they were and what they're doing. They're hanging them on telegraph poles all around the USA. And the reactors, and those reactors are to change the constituency of air. They've got big cooler pipes, and those cooler pipes are to keep the radiators cool enough because they're going to pour that much energy in that they will need to disassociate. Now, if you want to disassociate the oxygen molecule, you end up with oxygen atoms, and those atoms attach with other oxygen molecules, and you create O3. O3 will kill all biological life at 50 parts per million.
Okay, let's stop here for a second, because this is where it boggles the mind. All right, so not only are we talking about 5G basically cooking people, but now you have added something that, takes us into, nightmare terror sci-fi, where you said, they are essentially building a gas chamber throughout the United States. And they're doing this. Now, this is, again, I want to keep bringing in the concept of what I think Mark and I and Michael and so many others, that we feel like we are not fighting this alone, that we have spiritual guides or whatever. God's behind our back, got our back, as Mark likes to say. But the fact that the very device that they're using, that they want to use to be able to essentially kill all life in the United States, because we don't know where else it could be, but we do know that telecommunications people are seeing it in equipment that they are installing, okay, that Mark was the one who developed this. And so he tries to, he gets the concept, he puts it into documentation, and then over in the United States, we call it it's a preliminary patent, in that for a year, nobody can touch that patent. But if you do not spend many tens and tens, maybe $100,000 to research and get the patent, then it sits in a patent limbo where anybody else can come along and use it. All right? It's sort of like, that's why I took everything that I did with my products and put it in the public domain, because I didn't want somebody pulling a patent, a provisional patent they're called, would have taken and actually pulled a patent and prevented me from using my own, our own creations. So that's why we went that way. But the irony that the one thing that none of them wanted to be understood, they brought it to you and said, what is this? And you said, I made it. Now tell me we're not being guided and protected.
Well, that's one of the things, Nancy. I mean, think of the chance at me. What actually happened, I wasn't supposed to go to that carbon capture and storage conference. It was someone else. It was a friend of mine, right? He was the CEO of this particular business. He was one of Stevie's Shell Technology Ventures technical gurus, all right? If anything that got stuck with anything, they should come to this guy. Guy was a genius and very well respected. He'd had a bit of a personal issue, and I ended up having to go to this conference in his place. So that's, the chance of these things happening. And then obviously I thought, that's quite interesting. I'll invent something, because I see things every day in my life and I think, I can do something better than, for some inexplicable reason. Where do those ideas come from? Where did the waveguide inventions come from? The inventions I have, and I have lots of inventions, where do they come from?
Well, Mr. Tesla, I wouldn't know.
Well, yeah.
Where does this information come from? Because
exactly.
I totally understand. And that's, I think, what is really scaring the dark side to move. Because everything that they are depending on in their reality, we're seeing gone away because we keep focusing on these new things. And I think it really does come down to the concept of, yes, this is a terrible thing, but it's their thing. It's not our thing. And we can make changes just by talking, learning, getting ourselves beyond the awfulness of this stuff and say, well, not only is it awful, but it's really stupid. Because when you have got the most secret thing in the world, and you've got the guy that built that most secret thing in the world, who's got God behind him, I'm guaranteeing that secret's going to be released. And that seems to be part of talk about an information explosion. It's like every time we turn around, there's more information about what they're doing. And it's just like we're talking about now. How do we follow these breadcrumbs to be able to find this stuff out? It's just amazing.
Well, I think we're already doing it. And just listening to this conversation is an eye-opener for a lot of people about, these miraculous, for lack of a better word, arrangements of spirit to expose what's happening. And when I think about, the momentum that's growing in the wake up, in the movement, in the story, because this is, again, what it comes back down to for me and for the people I'm working with, to what story can we tell in concise enough terms, understandable to most people out there, that will not only alarm them, but give them hope, and also place it in the context of spirit, because I'm not going to back down from that. I am going to place it in the context of love, in the context of the code of chivalry as it applies to protecting Gaia and our children. I'm going to apply it to what it means for organic intelligence to overcome dark uses of artificial intelligence guided by divine intelligence. So it's basically OI overcoming AI with the assistance of DI, divine intelligence. And I go back to listening, as I just did to you and Mark, Nancy, about this very serendipitous kind of Mark ends up going to a conference and the guy who invented it ends up seeing the implications of it. I go back to what we like to call the Inner Light Network, which is working for the good of humanity, for the good of spiritual freedom, with divine guidance, and is also highly placed throughout military, intelligence, pharmaceuticals industry. There are the good infiltrators. There are, not only at the 3D level, but at 4D, angelic, in some places possibly what we'll call off-planet beings who are working towards the ultimate benefit of humanity, of Gaia, of spirit. You can see the evidence. We need to remind ourselves that even though we look at this rollout, this systematic, frightening rollout of an energy, weapons, systematic surveillance and control and elimination system, planetary, it's very easy to fall into there is this monolithic, all-powerful, evil cabal. They're controlling everything, and we're struggling feebly to overcome. No, just as you say, Nancy, they're scared. They're scared crapless, is what's going on. That's why they are moving too fast, too soon, with too much obvious, blatant attempts to roll out something that is so clearly opposed to human health and human life. Yeah. So to me, it's a winning scenario, and I want to remind us all of that. And in just a few weeks in Taos, New Mexico, we're going to tell the story. And God help us if we can be guided to tell the story right. It's going to have enough information to alarm people. It's going to put power in their hands to activate people, and it's going to put enough spiritual truth and hope into the field to inspire people. So we want to alarm you. Yeah. We want to awake and activate you. Yeah. And Spirit is guiding us all here. And there is hope and inspiration in the field big time.
Michael, can I just sort of interject there? I absolutely agree with everything you're saying. What I'm going to say to everybody, because what we don't want to do is depress everybody with the narrative, the information. What I'm going to say is this is a 24-karat gold runway that these criminals have laid for us. This is time to move on, throw off the shackles they have given us, and we now know, for some inexplicable reason, I know, and I'm telling the world what's going on. Sasha Stone's video is going absolutely viral. Millions of people now understand what 5G is about. I mean, we do have the naysayers, government agents and shills who are trying to shut the whole thing down. One of the reasons they're trying to send me to prisons to keep me quiet. But what I'll do, that'll create me as a martyr. That will only make things worse for them. And they and them are those that do as they're told. They're the people that acquiesce. That's who they are. Because this is just an ideology. This is an ideology where someone knows, as I know, that this is a weapon system. However, everybody that's fitting it, they're just doing as they're told. Well, said the same when they were throwing the children in the gas ovens. Yeah, well, we're being told what to do. Well, when it goes to court, it's no excuse. No excuses to this crime. 5G is a crime. It's an indictable offence. The recent Blumenthal, Senator Blumenthal in the congressional hearing came out and stated quite clearly, they asked the industry, the FCC, the FDA, where's the safety data for 5G? They've been told there isn't any. I already told the DV, the Democratic Veterans Party, this was last year, that there'd be no safety data, no research would be carried out in relation to 5G. It wouldn't pass any. That's why you wouldn't test it. You wouldn't test it because it will fail. It'll fail because it's a weapon system only. And the reason why they didn't carry it out, obviously Blumenthal and others in the US government, a lot of people have seen that DV conference video. They then pressed the industry, pressed the FCC, pressed the FDA for that information about the safety data, and they've now admitted on the 7th of February there isn't any. That then tells me that's in breach of the Nuremberg Code, which we're all signatories to. That is a humanitarian crime. 5G is an indictable offence, fact. And people need to they need to go to the Save Us Now website. They need to have a look at there's an indictable crime letter there. It explains how to fill it in, how to send it off, and how to hold individuals there the people that are still deceiving people about what 5G is, like the report had, I think, what was it, who you said it was there before, who did it, MCN or MSN or something, one of the media groups. Get the reporter, send a letter to him. He's a deceiver. These people are lying. They're being told to lie, and they're deceiving the people. And we will have justice. We will have justice, and make no mistake about it, they have laid a 24-carat gold runway for people to wake up and take back their power.
I totally agree there, too. Also, I mean, it's just so fast. Like I say, I expected we'd see this, if we were lucky, in 6 months. This is 6 weeks. And I believe that it's because of because we and others have started talking, because it's that super consciousness of humanity that's getting fed with 5G. You know, I mean, all of a sudden they see 5G and they are already programmed at the subconscious. So when you think about going before those people, Michael, what you need to do is think of them connected to the collective, because on a 3D level, a lot of these people's brains are unfortunately so already damaged and controlled that they actually can't make the leap in mental gyrations that allows them to even understand what we're saying. We can't go at it that way. And I think that this is what they're so afraid of, is that once you realize that, Walt Silva said to me one day, he said, why are we trying to change the reality? Because it works perfectly. It's designed to control and it's working perfectly. Maybe it's better that we create our own reality. And our own reality, which we have, concertedly for the last 4 years built, is one where all of the power is in the individual's mind. Reality is what you think it is. So what we have to do is focus on what actions can be taken right now that are positive actions. And again, it goes back to the law. They're breaking the law. They're breaking the law that is a moral law. And, there is so many, like one of the things that I talk about and have for a long time now is something, again, harking back to the Tea Party. I saw a video where this woman was standing there and she was virtually sobbing because she had just come to the realization that the republic she thought she lived in was not there. It was actually a population that was being ruled by a corporation. And she was so emotional, I thought she was full of crap. It was a Tea Party person. They didn't know what they were talking about. I thought she didn't know what she was talking about, but she was so emotional about it that I thought, well, I'm going to honor her emotion, at least look at this thing. And that sent me down the rabbit hole in a whole new direction. Because what I came away with is that the United States Constitution has not been enacted since basically right after the Civil War. The area of the District of Columbia was essentially given to bankers, international bankers, who then gave money back to the country to be able to rebuild after the war. That corporation, like an octopus, is sucked and gotten control over every single office in the United States government. And everybody knows this because it's called the United States Corporation. It has got a DUNS number. President Trump is considered the CEO. The federal government's workers are all the numbers that they use. Everybody knows this. All these governments are corporations. We do not have governments. They are not representative of the people. It is corporacy. It's taken fascism to a different state because in fascism you're trying to protect the state. But now everything is designed to protect the state, which we call the ship of state. A corporation.
USA Incorporated. Right.
Yes.
I want to bring out something that Mark has on his website, saveusnow.org.uk, specifically for notice of liability. We are approaching people on city councils and county commissioners as potential allies, as friends and neighbors, and at the same time need to go on the offensive from the word go. We end up in front of the county commissioners. I'm just going to read aloud a notice. This is for the UK. This is from Mark Steele's organization, saveusnow.org.uk. And it is under the page regarding a template for the rollout of 5G technology as an indictable crime. If you scroll down, you say, "Dear Sir, I'm bringing to your attention the scientifically established fact that the rollout of 5G is an indictable offense under domestic and international laws and a crime against humanity and the environment. Your involvement in the deployment, deception, misinformation, and cover-up in the wider community and continued support for this crime have been noted. Any further support of this indictable offense provided by you once you have been informed by this letter will demonstrate your real intent in regard to this crime." This goes to what Nancy was talking about earlier. Essentially, stand up in front of these folks and you say, you need to know that the information that I'm about to share with you will remove your plausible deniability in regard to the harm, deaths, disease, destruction caused by this. It's no longer manslaughter. Oh, well, you accidentally hit the guy over the head with a brick and you didn't know it. No, this is intent that makes it murder. Second part of the letter. To mitigate your involvement, we demand that you cease and desist from your role in the rollout of 5G so that the main architects of this criminal enterprise can be held accountable, while those who have been coerced into involvement can be seen to have acted in less serious roles. And then Mark's letter quotes the Accessories and Abettors Act, 1861. That's a UK legislation, if I'm right on that, Mark, as amended by the Criminal Law Act of 1977, covers all those who can be shown to have known of this human rights crime, yet who have not acted in accordance with the law. Now, this is a wake-up. This is a big wake-up for people. You know, we had some of our friends in New Mexico specifically say, this is a really important point I want to make here. They were told, hey, you know, we appreciate your concerns about 5G, but, you know, we're rolling it out totally tied to our 911 emergency alert system. You know, it's all dependent on the wonders of 5G technology. You don't want us to get sued by somebody who had a heart attack and they couldn't get to him because they didn't know what part of his house he was in because we couldn't use 5G. You don't want us to get sued for that. And these very wise people, our 5G activists down there, said, you want to talk about a lawsuit? Do you want to get sued, each one of you personally, for your personal liability in aiding and abetting 5G when you know of its harmful effects? You could lose your liberty, your home, and everything. So this is, you know, what people need to know. And this is where local sovereignty, counties, municipalities, and towns, where on the ground it's possible to either stop this or to have the flagrant violation of the rule of law be so obvious as to outrage people across the country and across the world. So I just want to thank Mark and saveusnow.org.uk for giving us that document, and we can adapt it, you know, to the specific places that we're going to be rolling it out. So, yeah, Mark, do you want to comment on that?
No, it's great. It's a really interesting document. We've caused an awful lot of stir here because of it. MPs have had it sent to them because obviously they come back with the usual IC and IRP guidelines. These guidelines, the IC and IRP guidelines, are only for acute exposure to this type of radiation. They've never ever been shown. There's no research that shows that chronic exposure to this type of radiation is safe. So therefore, they do not apply to 5G. 5G is on 24/7. It's basically data gathering, scanning part of the radar system, so they can actually see you in a cityscape. That's what 5G, one of its technical parameters, not the only one, but it's one of them. These guidelines only, these people should be in prison They have their names. They have the audacity to turn around and say that non-ionizing radiation is not dangerous. This is an absolute outrage, an absolute criminal event. I mean, I called one out from Public Health England. I was actually at a conference in Europe about the collapse in the small flying pollinators. And this chap said something along the lines of, well, you know, there's no evidence to show that non-ionizing radiation is dangerous. And I said to him, well, what's your role? Oh, yes, well, I work at Public Health England, I'm a scientist, etc., etc. I said, well, you're not a scientist, are you? He said, how dare you? I'm a scientist, I've got lots of certificates. I said, well, you're not a scientist. I said, because a scientist's main function is to be able to take into consideration all of the relevant, published, peer-reviewed research on a particular subject. And you at Public Health England, and ICNIRP, so-called scientists, not scientists at all, do not even consider the thousands of papers showing that microwave radiation, non-ionizing radiation, in non-thermal levels cause significant genotoxic and neurotoxic effects on humans, etc. So this is absolutely unbelievable how you've got these organizations masquerading as scientific bodies stating that non-ionizing radiation is safe when they do not even consider the absolute burgeoning amount of research that shows that this type of radiation is extremely dangerous even at non-thermal levels, because they only assess the thermal impact, and it's only for short periods of time. These smart meters, these smart grids, these smart cities, this radiation is going to be on 24/7, and you've got governments rushing it out. And the reason why they're rushing it out is because they know we have caught them out. Caught them between the devil and the deep blue sea. They do not know what to do. So what they're going to do is going to rush on regardless. And what I'm going to say to people, in law, we have the right to defend ourselves from assault, from attack. It's in every law around the world. Right? We are entitled under international law to defend ourselves.
I want to bring to everybody's attention, Mark, in our closing minutes here, your specific situation right now in the UK in the coming days, under threat of prison, with the charge being that you were making threats simply because you were bringing to their attention their criminal liability under these laws we're describing, that the statement that there are consequences to the violation of these human rights laws, that there are criminal consequences that are looming for these people, your statement to these people was used and is on the point of putting you in prison as an example of some kind of terrorist threat, simply to be invoking the rule of law backed by scientific evidence. This is where it's gotten to in the UK, which, we foolishly regard as somehow still being a bastion of, the original American concepts of jury trial and going back to Magna Carta. That's not what's happening in the UK, certainly not in the case of Mark Steele.
Michael, if this was a jury trial, they wouldn't even dare to even take me into a court if there was a jury there. This is going to be in a civil court where they're going to try and get me sent to prison, where they've requested that the judge in the original case, the 5G case, where he wouldn't gag me, they won't allow him to sit on the case. The council have actually already requested that the 5G evidence I have be taken out of the case. I mean, this is where you get tyrannical governments, tyranny, where, we've allowed these governments, these public servants, to just basically become masters instead of what they would know them to be, public servants. And I'm hoping and praying that the British judicial system will stand up and be counted. I'm pretty sure we will get a result. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Otherwise, I'm off to prison. So let's see what happens. And let's see, because really the British judicial system is on trial here across the world, because people are following this case across the world. The British judicial system is on trial here across the world. And let's just see what happens. Let's see if I do go to prison for speaking out against authority where they have acted in a criminal way, where they've rolled out an illegal, unlawful technology on top of the people to harm them.
Yeah, Mark, what would you be looking at? I mean, if God forbid that does happen, what is the length of time that you would be looking at?
We don't know. I absolutely haven't got a clue about that. Yeah, but it is extremely serious, the situation, and the more people that listen to this, get involved with the issues, because obviously this is a type of takedown of freedom of speech, and if they can take down the freedom of speech when we've got all the human rights laws, we've got all the laws that actually say that can't happen. This is what's really going on behind the scenes.
Yes, and this is why, when this broadcast, this program is on YouTube, we ask everyone to share it as widely as possible, because it is the spotlight on the situation that will increase the pressure for them to be forced to do the right thing, and to have this just so blatantly exposed. I think that's why how we hope and pray that we can help you, Mark, and have the rule of law honored. We would like to still be able to look to some examples in the history of the UK of having actually been the birthplace, as birthplace of Magna Carta, an essential human rights legacy in the West, to have it still be a living reality instead of a travesty. Nancy, we've got about 4 minutes left in our program here, and I just want to, call your thoughts in at this moment. What have you got on in your field right now?
Well, first off, I'm trying to get on Radio 5G the different videos that Mark has put out there, because seeing him and watching him on the video explain what, he has taken more time to explain here, it's still a very good synopsis of what it is. And when you look at him, you just get the feeling, if you're energy sensitive, that, oh wow, this guy is really, he's on our side. He knows what he's talking about. He's helping us out here. He's probably been blessed by, himself and other peoples. So I want to make people more and more aware of what Mark's saying right now, and hopefully every time you hear him saying it, continue to see him out and free, because that means that the judicial system that is not completely filled with essentially brain dead people, that there are people in there, their hearts are still beating, that their brains are still working. The judge that said that Mark should be considered an authority, they won't let him go into the courtroom again with Mark there. Okay? So that in and of itself is a real telling story of what is happening. That there are breakdowns in the internal structure of the matrix itself, that reality matrix that works very well for control. Because as we begin to get more and more aware, we begin to say no. And as soon as we begin to say no, then we begin to gain the control again. So I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, that's the essence of it, that the collective no from humanity in regard to this rollout is the most powerful thing we can do. And the collective yes to the restoration of Gaia, of our biosphere, and as it's a famous Buckminster Fuller quote about you don't replace an old system by fighting the old system. You create and manifest the new. Again, I want to let people know for that very valuable document that we just shared with you from saveusnow.org.uk. It's a template entitled "The Rollout of 5G Technology is an Indictable Crime." You could probably just Google that phrase alone, and it would lead you to the document, which you can adapt for use in your local area. And that can be sent by registered post to company directors, shareholders, employees, town councils, county commissioners, politicians, media, and others who are ignoring the law. So we are coming up on the end of our time here. And for Radio 5G, that's at www.5g-know.com, 5g-no.com. We also encourage you to go to takebackyourpower.net because the worldwide movement for a moratorium on 5G is gaining momentum around the world. There are victories being piled up every day, and we've got a long road ahead of us, and the clock is ticking. Let's make this happen while there is still time. Thank you all for being with us, for being with Nancy L. Hopkins and Mark Steele today. This is Michael Henry Dunn for Radio 5G. Thanks. God bless. Bye for now.
God bless.
Thank you for listening. May it be.
Let it be.